so much for attending my informational in-service on bedside shift report, mainly in the emergency department because that's where we worked, but this is applicable to all areas of the hospital and nursing in general. I thank you so much for all being a part of my committee because I know that it takes the time out of your day and brain cells that you don't want to waste in the early morning of your shift. Anyway, bedside report is a very critical topic. It's controversial because some people are really for it. Nurses that have practiced it their whole life don't see any other way. But nurses that have never done it think that it takes up too much time, or there's no real need for it, or it makes the patient feel uncomfortable. Some of these things are true. It does take up time. Some patients might feel uncomfortable, but the benefits of bedside report far outweigh the negatives involved with it. Some of the benefits include improved nursing documentation, improved patient care, transparency of information, better communication between shift, and a decrease of sentinel events related to poor communication. Now, the reason that I did this change project on bedside shift report was because I got a critical patient from an emergency room nurse, and this patient had all kinds of things going wrong that I didn't know about, and I felt that my patient's care was extremely delayed. Now, whether the nurse meant to do it or not, I'm sure she did not. But regardless, if we had both been at the bedside at shift change, there would have been a jog of memory for us to both say, hey, me to say, has this been like this the whole night or the whole day? And she could have told me what had happened or what was changing and those things. Nursing documentation is something we're all hounded on. We all get nasty grams and information about how we didn't document on restraints or ventilator assessments or critical drips. And those things are critical because if you go to court in 3 years for a patient that you had one night while you were half asleep, you are never going to remember the things you didn't document. So if you have a last jog of memory at the bedside with the nurse coming on, or if you're the nurse going or coming, whatever, you have a time to think, I haven't documented that. Let me go back and do it before I even leave so I don't have to worry about it at a later date. Patient care is improved because sometimes the patients, when you take them on, will say, well, my nurse hasn't done this all night or whatever, and you know that they're probably fibbing, but you have no way to say, hey, did you do this or has this been done? You know, how many cups of ice chips has this MPO patient had? So patient care is improved not only for the patient but for us, so we know how to thoroughly treat these patients without doing things we shouldn't do or that haven't been done, or letting patients get away with things that maybe they shouldn't. Transparency of information. Patients need to know what's going on with them, and I think especially in the emergency department, a lot of times we lack on telling these patients the things that they need to know in a timely fashion. Sometimes we think, well, we shouldn't tell them that, or it's the doctor's responsibility to tell patients certain information, and that's true, but it's important as nurses that we're all on the same page of what's going on. If a CT's been ordered or if labs are done and resulted and we're just waiting on the information from the doc, we need to tell the patients this so they know what's going on. Better communication between shifts. Sometimes there's like a war going on between day shift and night shift, and this should not exist. We should all be on one team, and we should all be able to work together and know what's going on with every patient. Sometimes certain shifts get a bad rap just because we think, well, they haven't done this, or why was this not done? They had all day or all night to do something, when really we don't know any of the things that a shift has had go on in their 12 hours. So it helps to communicate between shifts as a whole. There's also a decrease of sentinel events related to poor communication. Sentinel events are what hospitals harp on because it is the matriarch of poor communication, poor patient care. Sentinel events related to poor communication happen all too frequently, whether it be an IV infiltration or an allergic reaction that could result in death. Any of those things can be saved and can be fixed by adequate communication between shifts. Okay, I have created a badge roll tool that everybody has that you can put on your badge and flip through it just like we do our core badge things and our stuff for lab specimens and our codes. This one is called ED Cope, and it includes all the information that I feel is pertinent to communicate when doing bedside report. The E stands for extenuating circumstances. What brought this patient into the ER? Why are they so sick? What is their medical history? What surgeries have they had that have led them to the ER? The D stands for doctors. What doctors are involved? Sometimes we have patients come to the ER that are under the care of another doctor and they're just admitting them through the ER, and it's very important to know who you have to call for patient information and who is directly involved in this patient's care. The C stands for code status. We do not want to be doing chest compressions and intubating someone that is a no code. And so often someone codes and we're like scrambling around because we don't know their code status. And it's very important that we know this because it helps maintain the patient's wishes and it helps us know exactly what we need to do to best serve this patient. The O stands for objective of care. Some patients are hospice patients, they're on comfort measures. Some patients have an end goal of surgery when they leave the ER, which would mean they needed to be NPO and have certain medications and certain interventions. The P stands for physical interventions. Does this patient have a Foley catheter? Are they on the vent? What IV access do they have? What critical drips are going through those accesses? Are there plans for a central line? All of those things. And the E stands for emergency contacts. All too frequently, we have patients in the ER and we have no one to call when we need help making decisions for them or we need to appoint a medical power of attorney. It's very important to not only treat the patient, but to also treat their family and know who is involved in helping this patient, who cares for them on a daily basis, and who's going to be home when they go home. I think that's about it. I know that this is brief, but there's also a little saying on the front of the badge roll tool that says before you clock out, report at the bedside, and that bedside shift report is the last tool for the best care, and it truly is because it is the last thing we do in our day, and it's the first thing the oncoming shift does to set the tone for a good day, good communication, and the best patient care. So thank you so much for attending, and I hope that bedside shift report has a very successful outcome in our emergency department.